Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Daldis here. Just wanted to take a minute to share with you the Chapter 8, Section 5, A Time of Crisis. And what we're going to be discussing today is the spread of the plague, the 100 Years' War, and a bunch of events that are really going to reshape how Europe would develop from this point moving forward. So, folks, a couple things that we need to look at here, and these are going to be our focus questions for today. How did the Black Death cause social and economic decline? How did they cause social and economic decline? What problems afflicted the church in the late Middle Ages? And then what were the causes, turning points, and effects of the 100 Years' War? That's what we're going to be discussing today. And as you can tell from these 3 points, it is definitely going to be a time of crisis. So guys, when we say Black Death, we talk a lot about the impact that it had on Europe, but it's not just a European issue. Okay, the Black Death was not just a European phenomenon. Where did it start? It started more in the Middle East, Asia, and is going to be spread by the Mongols, which we'll talk about a little bit. Mongolia is pretty much where it started. What's really interesting about this is that it's going to take about 15 to 20 years for the disease to reach Europe. So during that time, it's going to be running roughshod over Asia, specifically Mongolia, during that time. So people had heard about this. It's not like it was a secret. The trade routes that connected Asia and Europe together are going to spread the tale of what was going on, and they call it pestilence killing. Okay, a pestilence killing unprecedented numbers of people in the East. All right, it's a disease. It was something going on. People had heard about it. Europeans had heard a rumor of it, but it wasn't confirmed yet. It's going to first land in Egypt and Constantinople. 1347 is when it's going to start making its way towards Europe, obviously Egypt being in Africa. The first landfall it's going to make in Europe is going to be in Sicily and southern Italy, and it's going to be due to a trading vessel. Okay, late 1347, that's when the disease is going to make landfall in Europe. Having established a foothold in Europe, the Black Death is going to strike Europe, and it's just going to hammer that country. Okay, it's going to follow existing trade routes, commercial routes, networks. All these cities are connected by trade. A lot of these cities develop, they buy and sell goods from one city to another. And so less than a year later, you're going to have just crazy amounts of disease breaking out. Mediterranean Sea connects a lot of these trading ports in Europe and northern Africa. You're going to see nearly all of France, southern England, all within the year. So we're talking within a year it had gone from, made its way from Asia, Mongolia, had made its way into Africa and Europe, and it is going to eventually make its way to France and England, which if you know the continent of Europe, that's quite a distance in a short amount of time. It's going to be to Germany and nearly all of Great Britain, Ireland by 1349. So again, we're now talking 2 years since it made landfall. And it's going to go as far north as Scandinavia and Eastern Europe by 1350. So now we're talking 3 years later. Okay, it's going to hit Russia 4 years later in 1351. What's interesting is that as it travels to Russia, it's going to pretty much vanish across Europe. So this thing, it like goes to an area, it does its damage, and then it moves on to a new area. So what I wanted to show you here with this map is this is where it started. So if you look here, Constantinople is going to be right here. Obviously, Egypt is down here, Alexandria. Okay, and this disease, as you can see, is just going to make its inroads like crazy through all the trade routes. So Italy, folks, right here, Italy is kind of the center of trade during this time of the world. Okay, Italy right here. A lot of Italian goods, a lot of craft, art, good products coming out of Italy and Sicily here. And then what you're going to see happen is, just like you can follow these trade routes, you're going to see this disease just start to spread out all over the place. It's going to go all over the place. All right, it's going to spread here. Here's Scandinavia up here. It's then going to eventually make its way to Russia, which is right there. Okay, so this disease is going to come from the east. Okay, it's going to move in to Europe and Africa, and then work its way around Europe and eventually find its way to Russia. So people want to explain what's going on here with the Black Death. Okay, people want to explain what's going on with the Black Death, and it's very, very difficult during this time because science is still kind of new when it comes to explaining things. So they're going to first turn to God, okay, theological. They're going to go to God, and they're going to interpret the Black Death as divine punishment for sins. Okay? Now, when you're desperate and everybody around you is dying, you're going to start turning to all sorts of things. So what they thought was that if they made penance for their sins or donated money to the church, that they could get their salvation and they could avoid dying. You have the flatulent movement, which is going to pop up because, again, people are getting desperate when they didn't get their answers theologically and people kept dying. They start turning to other things. Flatulence is where an individual whips themselves in violent public processions, again, trying to atone for sin. So they're literally walking the streets, whipping themselves with different devices. People turned, again, it's not just the religious aspect, they turn to astrological terms. So they start looking at the stars. Maybe the Earth is aligned with Mars or Pluto in a bad way. They said, look, its conjunction of the planets had polluted the Earth's atmosphere. When that didn't work out, they went to their old stalwart. And yes, boys and girls, this is unfortunate, but for the Jews, they're going to catch blame for almost every major epidemic global issue throughout their history. Ever since the dawn of the Jewish people with Abraham way back when, the Jews are going to constantly be blamed and they're going to be constantly kicked out of different areas. So some people are going to argue that the Black Death was caused by Jews. They said that they poisoned Christians in an attempt to wipe them out. Again, people getting desperate, making wild, ridiculous claims. Okay? These accusations fueled pogroms, which we talk about all the way up to World War II, where they start forcing Jews to live in certain aspects of cities, almost ghettos, if you will, is what the term is, as we'll find out once you get into U.S. history. So these pogroms are going to break out in Spain, southern France, Switzerland, Germany, and they're just going to literally start attacking Jews just for being Jews, blaming them for the Black Death, which obviously they had nothing to do with, but people are getting desperate because everybody around them is dying. So the Black Death is going to run its course over about 4 or 5 years. Okay? The massive amounts of death is going to affect towns and countryside. So it's not just limited to cities. It's going to find its way to the countryside. For example, Florence, the city of Florence, had 120,000 people in 1338. It's going to drop down to 38,000 by the end of this pandemic. That's how bad it's going to affect the city. 120,000 people down to 38. Some of the villages, thousands of them, were just abandoned in the late Middle Ages. You'd have these ghost towns that was once a village. Okay, the Black Death reduced their population to unsustainably low numbers. You could not live in a village with such low amount of people. Okay? What's really crazy about the Black Death is that Europe's population 60% lower than it had been in 1300. Okay, because of this. So 150 years prior, in 1450, it was at a certain level, but it was 60% lower than it was in 1300. It's going to take, guys, almost 200 more years, about 150 more years for the population to get to that 1300 level again. So just to kind of recap there, Europe's population in 1300 was at a number. Say it was, for example here, 100 million. 60% of the population is going to die. Okay? So that's 60 million people with this number set up. That's going to leave about 40 million people left. Okay? It's going to take 150 years for them to get back up to that population of 100 million. Okay? Those aren't the exact numbers, but it's just easier to work out the example for it. So guys, I want to show you a couple of maps of the spread of the Black Death and just how quickly this thing spread. So this map shows the extent of the plague in 1347. You'll see just a couple of areas here. You know, not too bad, right? Not a ton of spread. But then by 1353, I mean, this stuff is everywhere. Look at this, all over Africa. It's all over Spain, France, the Holy Roman Empire, Poland, Russia, England, Denmark. Just look at the spread. And that's all over 6 years. Okay, all over 6 years. Think about how crazy that is. Here's just another map just to kind of show you what's going on. You see the spread of the bubonic plague in Europe. You can see, obviously, with the darker colors where it kind of started, cities of origins, things like that. And as it spread, like just how massive the spread of this thing is. All right, and this is all over about 6 year time. Okay, 4 to 6 years. So when you look at the extent of this, that's just absolutely insane. This is where they found instances of the bubonic plague, and then obviously some of the green areas are a little more heavy hit areas. So what are the social effects? The Black Death is going to cause social and economic decline. So let's take a look at these social effects here. You're going to turn people off to religion. Some people are going to turn to magic and witchcraft for cures. They're that desperate. Others are going to believe they're being punished by God. It's really going to affect the mindset of people to watch 60% of the population, 6 out of every 10 people, guys, is going to die. Okay? Some people, they go the complete opposite direction with it. They think the end is coming, so they cash in all their savings, all their money, and they get drunk, they're partying it up, they're doing all sorts of crazy things, just living it up, thinking that this was a sign that the world was coming to an end. Okay? Normal life's going to disappear as we know it. Okay? The neighborhood feel, the community feel is going to disappear. Individuals are going to turn away from neighbors and family to avoid contagion. They're going to isolate themselves. And then, as I said, Christians are going to do what they do best, and that's blame somebody else, like the Jews in this case. So it can't be that it's a disease. It has to be the Jews' fault. Economic effects. Workers are going to die. So what's going to happen? Production is going to decline. You don't have workers, you can't make things. Okay? The workers that did live, they're fewer and far between. They're going to demand higher wages. So what you're going to see, the cost of labor is going to fly out. Inflation is going to happen, which means prices are going to rise. Pretty good if you're a worker at first, but then as inflation goes, everything gets more expensive. That's how inflation works. So even though you're making more money, you have to spend more money just to live. Okay? Landowners are going to just abandon farming altogether. So villagers are going to have to leave and look for work. And remember, we talked about thousands of villages just disappeared overnight. It's because everybody moved to towns looking for work. What you're going to see, though, is people are going to get ticked. You look at our current atmosphere, people are upset, and so they start protesting, and then some of those protests lead to riots. What's going to happen? Same concept back then. There was a global pandemic. A ton of people died. There's not a lot of work. So what's going to happen? Peasants are going to be upset, and they're going to start to revolt. A lot of these monarchies are going to be faced with these peasant revolts. So what did the Middle Ages bring? They brought spiritual crisis, scandal, division of the Roman Catholic Church. All right, the plague and death and disease does this to people at times. Okay, part of the problem you have here is monks and priests are going to die from the plague. Survivors are going to question why God spared some and killed others. It's really going to mess with people's minds. Okay, the church, because of the lack of monks and priests and all the mounting anger and people being upset, the church can't provide strong leadership. All right, and that's an issue. When you can't provide strong leadership, you have a problem. Okay, so the papal court was moved to Avignon in France. What you have here is the Babylonian captivity, so it leaves Rome, goes to France, and then you're going to start to see popes really live it up. Those that survived, a lot of people died and left wealth and land to the church. So those church members that survived, they're going to basically benefit off of all this death, and money's going to start pouring in. So popes are going to start living in luxury, which is really weird. People are going to be upset about this. they're like, hey, you're a pope, you're a leader of the church, you're supposed to be a servant of God. God, when Jesus was walking the earth in the Bible, it talks about how he lived a very humble existence. His stepdad was a carpenter. There's not really a ton of money there. And so the fact that the Pope is now living in luxury is going to cause people to start speaking out against the power of the church. Okay? Some of these conflicts are going to lead to the 100 Years' War. Again, once everybody dies from the plague, what's the next thing you want to do? Well, you want to start expanding your kingdom if you live. And so you're going to see the onset of the 100 Years' War during this time. So what else is happening? So between 1337 and 1453, England and France are going to fight a war, a series of conflicts, and it's going to take place over just about 100 years, hence the name 100 Years' War. Historians not really super good at naming things, pretty obvious, obviously. So what caused the 100 Years' War? Well, English rulers wanted to keep French lands, right? Got Norman ancestors coming in here, William the Conqueror, you guys remember him? He's going to come in. Obviously, the English rulers want to keep that. England is an island, guys, so they don't have a ton of resources. So any land they have, they want to hold on to. French kings coming to power. What do they want? They want to extend their own power. They want more. Okay. 1337, Edward III claimed the French crown. This is a big problem because he's not French, right? So the fighting is going to start. You're going to see the economies go crazy. What it is going to do is increase a sense of national pride. And because of that pride, it's going to make it very difficult for people to give up control. It's going to cause people to not want to stop fighting because, oh, it's a country thing. I got to fight for my country. So here's just another map of all the battles that occurred. You see here in purple, France is losing this thing hardcore. And it's not until a young lady by the name of Joan of Arc comes in that you're going to see France kind of rally and really start to push Britain back. You start to see all the battles that Joan of Arc was in. And like I said, she's going to do great things until she gets captured by the British and then murdered. But then that's going to cause her to become a martyr. So during the 100 Years' War, as is typical with all warfare throughout history, if you look at it, there's going to be some changes, some developments, some people that really make a difference. One of the biggest things you're going to see here, guys, is the longbow. Okay? What is it? The English armies are going to be equipped with the longbow, which is going to overpower the French counterparts, who only had crossbows. If you know anything about bows and arrows, crossbows do not shoot nearly as far as longbows. Okay? English archer could also shoot 3 arrows in the time it took a French archer to shoot 1. And again, if you know anything about reloading, the faster you can reload, the faster you can shoot, which means your enemy is going to be trying to reload once while you're getting 3 shots off. Okay, and so the longbow is going to kind of change that for England, which is going to shift the power in their favor, the latest and greatest military technology. Joan of Arc, as I mentioned her before, she's going to become a great leader. She's actually, it's kind of a surprise. France is losing. She comes up, says that God told her that she needed to lead and help France out, and so they're going to give her this command, and she's just going to be very, very successful. Okay, and it's going to rally the French forces to victory. Okay, French armies are going to continue to win, and they're going to ride her momentum. Even she was executed by the English, and that was the worst thing the English could have done because it made her a martyr. It fired the French people up even more. And then obviously the war is going to change with the development of yet another new technology, the cannon. Okay, the cannon is going to help the French capture English castles and English armies. I don't care if you're wearing a suit of armor, it's not going to stop a cannon shot. Okay, cannonballs would riddle these castles in England and just turn them into rubble. All right, longbow is not going to stop a cannon shot. Okay, and so that's going to swing the victory to the French. And they're going to do that at Normandy. So there's just a quick recap of all 3 of the items that we talked about, the longbow, Joan of Arc, and the cannon. Here's just the map, as I said. So what you see are these shaded areas here are all going to get captured back by France during the 100 Years' War. So France is going to expand from this small area here to this during the 100 Years' War. Okay, so that is what France is going to expand to. That is huge for the French. So what are the effects of the 100 Years' War? A couple of effects here, guys. First of all, in France, national feeling is going to grow. Kings are going to expand their power because people are amped up that they got a W. Okay. In England, Parliament's going to take the power of the purse because they are tired of spending money on these senseless wars. And so kings now have to start looking for new ventures to get money, which is going to lead to the expansion of their empire and also the dawn of, hint, hint, the United States. Longbow and cannon made soldiers more important and knights less valuable. So slow-moving guys in big suits of armor, easy targets, right? So that's going to make them obsolete. Okay, obsolete. And then what it also proved to monarchs is that they're going to need large armies instead of feudal vassals. So no more small little neighborhoods. We need large standing armies. Here's your Section 5 assessment if you would like to take it. How many Europeans died in the Black Plague? 1 in 3, 1 in 50, 1 in 1,000, 1 in every 100, which is not an effect of the 100 Years' War. Take a minute to put down your guesses. And here are your answers. So about 1 in 3, 30% of Europeans died. It's going to affect the population by 60% when it's all said and done. And knights and castles became more important is not, remember guys, not an effect of the 100 Years' War. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Make sure that you pause this video anywhere you need to and rewind it where you need to. Thanks guys.